Thank you. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. I'm Waldek, as it says there. I have 20 years of experience in IT, and I came here just to give a little bit of my experience and maybe my side on what you can do when you reach the senior level. I work for the quite strange named company that you probably can see on the board there. This is a company that was launched in 2021. It is a biggest startup in the IT infrastructure technology world. So far, we have almost 90,000 employees, which means it is a big scale organization where you can actually learn about what we do, or what we have in there. What I wanted to give you a bit of an overview today is, how do I even got there? Why I'm here? Why this whole journey to the beyond senior is possible? What you can do to even reach that level? And I thought, what's the best way to prepare for this kind of presentation? Probably you actually show up in this room to the number of people and try to present something that, let's say, it's not technical, and you're not on the camera, you're not behind your desk, you're not in the comfort zone, so you have to be, a little bit more precise in what you're doing, and the stress is still here. And I envy David when he was saying about, it's easy for him to come out and just speak about stuff that, that's just talking from his experience. That's just simple talk of what he does. For me, it's not that simple. So excuse me if you see me doing some hiccups, not really always following what's in my head right now. But it's a bit of a stress that kicks in. Nevertheless, I thought, well, what's the best way to actually learn stuff and get more comfortable with speaking to the people if not doing it yourself, and then just, learning by practicing, essentially, is what I do. And by doing so, you will see later on the slides, I've kind of managed different ways of broadening the scope of my career, or broadening the options of my career. And one of which is obviously developing a certain skills that are not technical, skills that you don't always find obvious in your day-to-day work. Yesterday, we had a great pleasure. I had a great pleasure. Some of you probably as well. I can see some faces I saw yesterday. To attend workshops where there was a lot of information shared around what you should be developing, what is the not best, but let's say, what are the avenues and options for you to look at in developing the next future skills and to go beyond senior. And obviously, that's one of the areas where I'm going to be covering and showing you about as well. What I wanted to show you, it's the soft skills that I had to learn. One of which was the presentation. Obviously, not the technical part of that, because clearly I have a lot of lessons to learn about how to actually present stuff. That's just pure presentation. Well, essentially, trying and failing is what I'm trying to achieve here. Presenting my own perspective. It's obviously not always an easy task for some of us, and I'm going to be trying to do that. As Jen says, prepared to fail successfully, and I'm hoping that's going to be one of these cases here today as well. If I fail, at least you're all aware. And as I said before, we had these interesting workshops yesterday where Paweł and Bartek, who are here, I think, can't see them right now, we're talking about the missing gap in the journey of the technical leadership. And those gaps include stuff like the very important, which to me seem to be, and I think I'm not doing great at that point, but you will see in a moment. It's the delegation part, for instance, where the multi-level multi-level skill, as the delegation appears to be, gives you the ability to learn not only the way to pass on your work to the colleagues and get them to ability to actually learn from that experience, but also frees up your time so you can do some more stuff, new stuff that will be interesting for you. Communication, that falls into that space as well. Delegation obviously learns us how to communicate. Again, I'm going to thank you, Bartek and Paweł, for sharing that knowledge, because it opens your head sometimes when you're doing stuff for so long, you forget how this happened at the beginning. What was the first step? How you got there? What skills you've had to learn? And where did you come from? That's sometimes a question mark you ask yourself post all the stuff, all the work you've done. So let me give you a little bit of a background. I'm going to give you a 10-minute discussion, a 10-minute session of my whole previous career experience, so you can understand where I come from, why do I did all that. No, I'm sorry, joking. It's not going to be 10 minutes. Quickly though, what I did before, I started, as I said, about 20 years ago as a IT technician in the public sector, which, as some of you might be aware, it's a bit of a challenging place to start your job because it's very restricted, it's budget limited, and it's a very aged infrastructure that you have to manage. So that was the first challenge to start the career with. Let's face it, it was a challenge, but it was a good one. I think that kind of structured the way I see the world now. So I'm glad I could do that. Then I moved on to the different roles, which were more about software supporting roles. I've never been a developer as you guys, so you probably will see that in the later slides, that not everything is falling into the developer scope or developer avenues of the different paths and journeys you can take. But at least I will give you the different flavor of what you can do in the IT world, I hope. Then I had to move to UK. Well, not had, I wanted to. And I ended up getting a very interesting topic job itself, which is a corrugator takeoff operator. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few moments. Following that, I finally managed to secure a job in the IT sector back again, starting service desk analyst. Well, let's face it, a little bit of a step back for the career, but very, very challenging and very good one to develop the communication skills, which were initially developed at the previous job in the UK, but later on you could get on to more of a business skills that you need when you're talking to the customers, when you're talking to the clients. After that, I moved up the ladder a little bit and progressed within the same company to the next role, which was the middleware specialist. And following that, I moved back to Poland and went through the series of different jobs, resulting in the place where I am right now, which is the solution architect and architect chapter lead. Also, I'm a team leader, which kind of gives me that flavor of the leadership role, which I'm going to tell you about in a second. Okay. Few words. Why did I put them there? Because I think these kind of words gave me the ability. Sorry, I'm trying to unlock that. There you go. These words gave me the ability to look at what I did and how I did it, and reflect on these lessons, or mistakes or ways I've done stuff, and hopefully that will help you to understand why I am where I am, why did I decide to do the things I do later on in the presentation. So, as I mentioned before, I started the first job in the UK in the corrugated board factory. It's a manufacturing job. All you do, you go in, you stand at 6 a.m. Not my type of work really to start that early, but you do what you have to do to get some food on the table. So started that, and first time I come in, and what I'm hearing is I'm going to be on the radio all the time, all day, expressing to the guys on the actual machine what is defect on the cardboard that's going into my way. Why do I tell you all that about? Because essentially, when you think about it, you are in the new environment, in a new country, speaking a language that you think you know, but you are surrounded by people who have, let's face it, not an Oxford dictionary kind of language. So you have to adapt, you have to learn, and you have to learn the skills to communicate with those guys, not essentially on the professional level, like you speak to any sort of CIOs or executives, but you have to be able to communicate clearly the issues, but also build that relationship with them by communicating, like we do every day, but in English, which for me at that point kind of seemed like a challenge. So I thought, well, let's do that. Let's try to be humble and step back and learn from the basics again and try to develop that skill that's later on shows to be very important in my career. The next step was, the next part is be grateful. Why is that there? Sometimes it's very important to understand that what we do in our professional life, it's not only your job. It is sometimes the thing of falling into place, like stuff like people that are surrounding you, the environment you're in, and the manager that's by your side. And with that, I really would like to thank you, Magdalena. My manager, she's here, and I thought just I give a little bit of a gratitude to her, because I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't because of her. And that's where the famous sentence comes in, that behind every great man is a great woman. Well, great man is a bit of a relative here, but let's face it, it kind of makes it a little bit more interesting. And thanks to that, yeah, so having the ability to be surrounded by people that helps you to strive, to build a better person, to develop skills you don't really think you need at this very stage, but they think they will be useful because they see a potential in you, kind of gives you that spring to go up that way. And it gave me that spring, certainly, and I'm grateful for that. So thanks again. Be open mind. Well, keep open mind. Why is that thing there? Because at some point in your life, you will have to think about not necessarily what you do in the current job, but what is the department doing? What is the unit that you're in is doing? Why do they do things? Someone was saying before how important the vision is, and how important is to communicate that vision clearly to the team, to the people that work in the organization, so they can follow the same aim, the same target as you do. And that communication and that sort of vision sometimes comes when you open that mind and you start to see how the whole organization is actually falling into place. How do you actually become part of the organization that your team mate is aware of what we do? All right, we all, in your case, for instance, code to build an application. The other people in different teams may do a different stuff, a backend, for instance, whatever they do. But then there is a different set of teams in a different department that do something completely unrelated to what you do. And it's interesting for some of us sometimes to just explore that, see what they do, why do they do things, how do they do things, what's the leadership position, what's the actual leadership structure in that department, because that opens your head to vast abilities that can happen and appear in the whole company that you work for. And finally, strive to learn basics, and that's one of the things that I've learned during that my whole transition past senior and trying to get to different roles, which involved initially the architect role, where I found out quite quickly that not only the communication skills that I've learned previously back in the UK, and I could start to communicate with people effectively, is important, but also it's important to start looking at skills like communication, delegation, presentation, building relationship, leading, and innovating, which not always is something you might think of as a separate skill because it comes with your job. Sometimes, not always. In that case, I've learned how important it is to communicate clearly, not only with your stakeholders, but also with the teammates. As a team leader and as a chapter leader, we all have to communicate certain type of information across the wider public, not necessarily as wide as this one. So yeah, still is something new. But that communication has to be clear. We all have to make sure that it's addressed to the right people, it's understood, and it's actually taken. Any action that needs to be taken, it's taken upon those communications worlds. Obviously, set of different skills that you have to sometimes learn from basics will be something that you have to look at some point if you want to develop past that senior role. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to, but if you see that as an option, you might want to take that opportunity. I remember speaking to Rory yesterday, and quite interesting thing he said about what you can actually, what's the criteria you have to actually fulfill in some certain places, some organizations, to be promoted higher above the senior. And some of those criteria involve leadership skills, which not everyone thinks that they're necessary for any promotion, but certainly some companies see them as necessity. So it's worth thinking about learning that from the basics, from the beginning. Something completely different, unrelated to your job, might be the next step worth considering. Going forward, what's ahead? So you can see what led me to the point where I am right now. And I was standing in front of these two options initially, trying to understand what each of them entails, but also what would be the best option for me at each point going forward. Excuse me. And technical excellence or any sort of technical role is still something I really have quite deep in my heart, and I really want to follow that. And I did. But also, thanks to the ability in seeing, it's in myself something different than just a technical guy, someone who has some certain soft skills that we could use. I also been slightly pushed, but let's say I needed that push to explore what's the leadership role and what leadership opportunities we have. Obviously, past that path, you can also consider going even further down the ladder or further up to the C-suite. For those of you who know aware, I hope everyone is aware, but if not, this is other CIOs, CEOs, etc., etc. That's probably the finish line for anyone, unless someone doesn't really want that, which understandably makes sense sometimes. So let's just quickly focus on the leadership path. There are certain steps in that career which you could take, which not necessarily involve any extra any extra job. Sometimes, like the technical leadership, might be something that you're already doing. But if you're technical enough, you're the center of excellence. Everyone sees you as a technical person and can go to you and ask the question. You can be a mentor. That's starting to form the technical leadership role within your current scope. And it's great. Continue doing that, because it will give you the chances to understand how your communication, how your skills, how the mentoring falls together into the wider skill set that leadership path will entail going forward. You also have functional leaders and executives, which are functional leaders are the people who we call managers, but I don't like that name. I'll show you in a second. Oh, in fact, I might show it now. But instead of functional leaders, let's just call them the leaders of the team, not necessarily working as the technical leaders, but the ones who are actually doing the work with you, showing you how the things should be done, helping you to achieve it, instead of standing behind you. For some reason, you can't see there is a dot, kind of like a ball, massive iron ball that they all need to pull. But yeah, instead of being a lead manager, I really encourage you to think about how you can lead by example, how you can lead the team, showing them what's the thing they should be doing, rather than just pushing them, you do that, you do it this way. Someone mentioned that today as well. The micromanaging, really not the way forward, I think. Nevertheless, these are the options for you to explore if you decide leadership path is something you're interested in. Next step, and that's the step I really wanted to focus more on the most, is the technical paths I had in front of me. Certainly you might have slightly different ones. Nevertheless, some of those will also be applicable for you. So we have a solutioning as an avenue to explore. It's a slightly less technical, more commercial driven role, where obviously you have to prepare solutions that's viable, that's something you can sell to the client, and at the end of the story, change it to the project or construct it to the project or program itself. So quite important role for the organization, and it might be something you might be interested in going forward if coding is bored you at some point. Consulting, the next part, says for itself usually. If you have very good technical skills and you know how to share that with the client, with the people, and you can communicate clearly, that's one of the skills you're probably going to need for that one, then you can go off to the customers, to a different units, different department. As Rory was saying, he was consulting his own units within this organization he works for. So that sort of consulting is something that is a different job role in itself, but it's also very interesting to look at if you really want to be seen as a technical, eminent person. You also have sales. That's self-explanatory. You don't really, have any very technical knowledge in there required. But if you have that knowledge, and I think that's really beneficial for those who consider being in front of the client and selling the products. If you are technical and you know what you can sell, you know how things operate, you know what's viable, what you can actually provide to the client, well, that's going to give you a head start and the team will like you. Not like other salespeople you sometimes see and you don't really feel like you have the same common ground with them because they trying to push up something you don't really feel like you can deliver. Being salesperson as a technical guy, well, that's going to give you the chance to sell something that's actually going to be valid and it's going to be more useful for the client. Going down the path, just moving to the architecture. So within the architecture, that's where I sit right now. You have a path. It's a definition that so far, it's probably still the most accurate in the place where I am. It doesn't always necessarily is as accurate elsewhere, but you have this kind of structure of domain architects being mainly focused on the technology or area of expertise they're good at. You have a solutions architect that are the ones who join the solution, they join the technical work to the more enterprise, wider picture, business-driven result together. So solution architects, as I do myself, we kind of have to lead the team of architects. Leading is not necessarily the right word, but you are upfront, you are the one who communicate and commit to the client, and you talk to your domain architects and try to achieve the common goal, which is the project delivery, the deliverables of the project. Enterprise architect, on the other hand, has not very little, but it's not really the most technical part anymore. It's more of a business-oriented role where you focus on solving business problems, the key problems to the customer, and delivering what is the most valuable for them and out of the value world. Nevertheless, still a very interesting job because at some point you might find technical work is great. You still want to do it, but you also want to have a little bit more challenges in your life. And those challenges will involve definitely talking to the client, understanding their business, understanding their problems, trying to solve those problems, thinking about the strategy, and thinking what is the best way to progress their IT infrastructure or in IT organization going forward. So past that, you have a parallel route, which is principal engineer, principal architect, distinguished engineer, distinguished architect. All those roles, depending really where you fit and depending on the organization, might be available as a technical eminent role where you show your technical skills at the very top level of the organization. Depending obviously on the structure, you might be positioned differently. In some companies, you will be positioned as a executive, as a distinguished engineer who will have more of an executive business-oriented role rather than the technical at this stage anymore, but it's going to be global role. So it's not necessarily going to be focus and customer-oriented only, but it's going to be more related to the whole organization you work for. Principal is a role before that, which gives you the slight different flavor of working alongside these distinguished engineer and actually filling in or completing their mission, their strategy. And then finally, the last but not least is the C-suite that I've mentioned. I don't really want to go deep into that because I don't know much about it myself. Nevertheless, that's the option for you if you consider technical role being something you're interested in. And that concludes my presentation. So thank you.